Hey listeners, if you're enjoying Speaking Soundly, please consider supporting our work with a tax-deductible donation. You can easily contribute on our website at artfulnarrativesmedia.com/donate. Click the link in the show notes of this episode, or you can follow us on Instagram at SpeakingSNDLY and get all the information there. Either way, every donation, no matter the size, helps us keep bringing you inspiring conversations with remarkable artists. So thank you for your continued support. We really appreciate it. Looking for world-class performances at an accessible price point? See yourself at Lincoln Center presents free and choose what you pay performances. Where else in New York City can you experience contemporary flamenco, mental health-inspired choral works, experimental jazz, and an interactive family dance performance, all in the same week and for less than the price of lunch? Explore the full calendar of events today at lincolncenter.org/presents. Be sure to check out slippeddisc.com for the latest inside information on classical music now. Alexa Tarantino is a dynamic saxophone performer, composer, and educator who recently made history as the first female full-time member to join the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis. While this achievement is groundbreaking, she's quick to point out that she did not get there alone.
I appreciate the use of the word trailblazer, but I think there are so many incredible people that I was so fortunate to be around. Just so many incredible contributions from women in the field, and I'm very grateful to take a full-time seat at the table.
You're listening to Speaking Soundly, a backstage pass to today's biggest stars of the music world. I'm your host, David Krause, principal trumpet of the Metropolitan Opera. During each episode, you'll hear me speak with inspiring performers about their creative process and the personal journey that led them to the stage. Congratulations on your recent appointment as a permanent member of the world's preeminent big band, Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. We're speaking now high atop Columbus Circle in New York City, backstage, right outside the House of Swing. This place represents a connection to the past, present, and future of jazz. What does it mean to you to call this iconic place home?
Thank you so much for having me, David, and thank you for your congratulations. I'm super honored and thrilled. All I can say is that every day is really a pinch me moment. So to be here every day in a working capacity to contribute what I can is truly an honor.
The band here has such a tight and unified sound. It's really unmistakable, but that sound is made up of a bunch of individuals like yourself bringing your own voice, sound, and spirit to the ensemble. How would you describe your own sound, and what does it feel like to have it in the mix of this amazing ensemble?
It's incredible. It feels incredible. And that is the magic of the orchestra, I agree, is that it's this culmination of individual souls and sounds. I love that about the orchestra because everybody's truly their character. The same way you'd interact with them in the hallway is like the same way they stand up to play a solo. It's so much fun to just say like, yeah, that's Vincent Gardner. Yeah, that's Kenny Rampton. Oh, yeah, that's Carlos, And
now that's Alexa Tarantino. In addition to your great artistry, you bring something novel to the ensemble, and being the first woman in the group, it's a groundbreaking achievement for sure. But on the other hand, you've played in all-female groups before, like the Diva Orchestra, and as you were growing up, you had many great female role models to follow into the field. Looking back on your experience getting you here, do you feel like a trailblazer, or do you feel like the journey was a natural progression of your hard work, talent, support, and opportunity?
What you just said is the perfect way of phrasing it. I mean, I appreciate the use of the word trailblazer, but I think there are so many incredible people that I was so fortunate to be around. Sherry Miracle of the Diva Jazz Orchestra, she guided me right out of college into my first full-time job, which enabled me to move to New York City. And then another incredible mentor is Rini Rosnes of Artemis. So there's just so many incredible contributions from women in the field. And in the orchestra as well, people who have come through and subbed Camille Thurman, Erica von Kleist, Tanya Darby, Helen Sung. So many amazing people have been in the rotation, and I'm very grateful to take a full-time seat at the table.
You had just mentioned Erica von Kleist. you first heard her in the third grade, and that's really what inspired you to be a saxophonist?
Yes, yeah. So we both came from West Hartford, Connecticut. Hall High School was the local high school music program there. And my parents took me to one of the Hall High Concert Jazz Band concerts as an elementary schooler. And it was about the time that you start thinking about what instrument you might want to play. And I saw a young woman stand up and play the saxophone. I'm pretty sure it was a ballad feature, if I remember correctly. And I just sort of tugged on my mom's jacket and said, that's what I want to do.
So you're inspired to play the saxophone in elementary school. It's one thing to want to do something. It's another thing to actually put your hands on it. What was that first interaction with the instrument like? Did you take to it right away, or were you wrestling with it?
Actually, I've never thought about this moment until just now. I'm remembering one of the first times I put the instrument together was in my parents' bedroom, and I think I was with a babysitter, and I remember her name was Lindsay, but that's all I remember. And she had played the saxophone. She had dabbled in it before, and I think I had the reed on upside down. I don't know what was happening, but I remember her giving me some concrete tips, the functional tips of the assembly. And I think once I made a sound, that was it. It's just that vibration, that resonance that just sparked something. And in 5th grade, I was able to join the before school jazz band. So from that moment, that's what really hooked me, was getting to play with other people. The potential for it to be slightly different every time, to riff on a little something, or to just kind of walk around the house playing little things, just the spontaneity and the freedom of it. And but there were certainly things that I wasn't, I'm also quite a perfectionist, and I want to be a good student. And I remember even at 4th and 5th grade early morning jazz band rehearsals, I made my parents fire my carpool person because they weren't getting us to rehearsal early enough. So I think I just really wanted to be there 20 minutes early every time to prepare and get my stuff together and warm up and play some little things. And unfortunately, the other kids I was carpooling with, their parents, it was just sort of get there just in time.
Like normal people.
But my parents, I think that was not an easy to their best friend. I think they had to say, actually, we'll drive Alexa from now on. And if so-and-so wants to ride with us, that's fine, but we don't blame you.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
For so many kids, carving out time to practice is a total drag. Did you enjoy practicing when you were younger, or did you consider it a chore?
I enjoyed it. My dad told me when I first started and he bought my first saxophone, he said, okay, we'll get you a saxophone, we'll get you lessons, but I'm not gonna get on you about practicing. He's like, it's all up to you. And that sort of was okay, this is my baby now. And of course there were times where they would check in and say, did you practice today? What did you do? But besides that, casual parent check-ins, it was very self-directed. And in high school, I had a really strict routine of what I would do after school, and through into the basement, late at night, as any of us did. I'm sure you did this too. Anybody who chose something that requires that sacrifice of time, versus maybe your social life or your high school life. I think we all did that and felt like the only ones, perhaps, or one of a small few. But then when we graduated, public school and went on to music school or college and then into the music world, and we found our people, that's really the common thread, is being willing to make that sacrifice, because it's not really a sacrifice at the end of the day. It's a trade for something that becomes much more meaningful down the line.
When was the first time you played for someone and you felt like you affected them with your sound and with your style?
That's such a good question. I remember in high school, over the holiday season, we would go do concerts at the Salvation Army. Those were some of the more meaningful concerts for me, just to think wow, I'm in love with doing something that brings joy to people. I'm so fortunate to be able to do what I do now as a professional, but even as a student then in high school, I thought, wow, I'm so lucky to have something I'm so passionate about to have people around me that can help me get there. And that's what started to make me feel like this was really my purpose. It's really about actually just making people feel joy and hope and leaving any room better than it was when I first walked in. And I often think about, what might happen when I'm like 80 or 90. You hear stories of people start to have difficulty playing their instruments, such a physical thing, the travel, the touring,
It starts way before 80 or 90, I'll tell you that right now.
But I think to myself, like, wow, I'm so lucky to do what I do now every single day. And like, should anything ever happen, really what it boils down to is just helping other people. When I get nervous about, a technical passage or something like that, or intonation or whatever, all that is so important, but to balance it with the larger scope is very meaningful.
Yeah. You went to school to study jazz at two amazing schools, in the Eastman School and at Juilliard. When you were at Eastman, while you were an undergrad there, didn't you step in to play with Earth, Wind, and Fire?
Yes.
I talk about a trial by fire. How does that even happen? And have you always been that fearless?
I really appreciate that word because it's something I work on. I try to be fearless. The Earth, Wind, and Fire thing was wild because it was honestly just a moment of expressing gratitude that led me there. I was a scholarship recipient from a family foundation that had put on a benefit concert featuring Earth, Wind, and Fire, and those proceeds went to scholarships for students at the Eastman School of Music. And so I connected with the family, of course, to say thank you, and we stayed in touch over the years. And when I was at Eastman over the summer, the Rochester Festival was happening, Jazz Festival, and Earth, Wind, and Fire was the big headliner. And I got a text from a friend of mine of the family and the family foundation saying, Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind, and Fire is in town, and I think he's going to be at Java's, the local coffee shop right next to the school. And if you want to meet him, run over to Java's and see if you can find him. So I ran downstairs and walked in, and there he was. And I just introduced myself. I just said, hi, I'm Alexa Tarantino, and I love your music, and you're my mom's favorite. And I actually am a scholarship recipient. I just wanted to say thank you so much. And he said, what do you play? And I said, I play saxophone. And he said, where's your horn? I said, it's in my apartment across the street. He said, okay, sound check's at 4:30, come by. And I was like, okay. So I went to sound check, and it was so sweet. He said, what do you want to play? And I was like, I'll play anything, whatever you want. And he said, how about a jazz piece? I want to feature you. That was the craziest thing. He said, he inserted a whole chunk into the show for me. So I played I Remember You, because that was the tune I was learning at the time.
Wow.
And we ran through it with the band, and he sang part of it and then passed it to me for a solo. And then the rest of the night, he had me just kind of sitting in the horn section. And wow. So I appreciate that you said it was fearless, but truly I was just trying to say thank you. And I guess that's the biggest lesson that I learned is, not to be afraid to introduce yourself and to say thank you, when it matters, and you never know what can happen.
I want to talk for a minute about a superpower that you possess that I am in complete awe of. That's the power of improvisation, because it just mystifies me. As a classical musician, I just play the notes someone else wrote for me on a page, but you create music instantly, in real time. Is this a natural skill that anybody can learn?
Anybody can do it. No, truly, 100%, anybody can do it. It's not a superpower, I promise. I appreciate that because that's so cool. That word is cool. But I still look at people and I'm like, wow, they have the superpower. We all are still figuring it out. And it's a lifelong search. We're always working on new language, expressing what we are feeling on the instrument, whether it's frustration, joy, concern, what can we do on our instruments to bring these emotions out? Or what can we play on our instrument to respond to what that drummer just played? All of these elements that come into play, whether it's communication, emotion, those all create these variables. So it's every single time it's different. Even though we might have that base toolbox, we're always taking a risk when we stand up.
You're also an amazing composer. And many tracks on your albums feature your own tunes. Is composing a different muscle than improvising?
Composing is different for me in the sense that I have to stick to my decisions. There are so many options, and so there's a lot of question and answer in my head when I'm composing, and so it's actually a great exercise for me to just commit to something and stick to it and sort of be fearless about it and say, no, this is what I heard, this is what I plunked down. I don't hate it. I think there might be a couple other options. I've exhausted those options. Let's put it down. So it is a great exercise in that aspect.
Every tune you compose likely reflects a specific moment in time in your life. When you revisit these tunes, does it take you back to those moments that the tune was based off of?
Yeah, it does. It's fun. It's like a snapshot. And that's how I've tried to think about my records as well. What are the themes of this year for me? What are the highlights of this year for me? Or the lowlights of this year for me? Where did I travel? Who did I see? What were my challenges? And sometimes it can be literally about a particular style or tempo. Like this year, I told myself I'm going to get my up-tempo stuff together. So sometimes I've used it like that in the past, like a challenge to myself. And other times it will be like I'm envisioning a beautiful garden in Italy that I love. And so like, let's recreate that.
At the rate that you're churning out albums, you're going to have this retrospective of your life that you can look back on any time.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's amazing. You have a new album coming out this June with one of my all-time favorite jazz vocalists, Cécile McLorin Salvant. She was on the podcast earlier, and I'm such a fan of hers. When you're playing in a small combo, whether it's with Cécile or any great musician, there's this amazing phenomenon that happens where you're communicating with people at lightning speed without words. What does it feel like to be able to communicate with another human being on that level night after night?
It's amazing. It's electric, and it's better than real life. In that respect, it does feels like superpower vibes. That feels like, whoa, like, similar, I'm sure athletes would feel the same way, on a court. There's that heightened sense of connection that can only take place there. It's a sacred space, and it's like, I'm sure athletes or I'm imagining like a football team hitting the field as the lights, come on. And for us, it often feels the same way when we walk out on stage and they say Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis, and I look at us all walk on stage, and that's my big pinch me moment is like, oh my gosh, am I walking on stage right now? Because I used to see them walk on stage. I'd be in the audience as a high schooler, right. I'd be watching them.
You're so easy to talk to, and you're so nice. I would imagine that you're just a great collaborator based on that. Does that go hand in hand? Like, do you have to have an agreeable personality to be a good citizen on the bandstand?
I think you do.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we've all heard stories of bands back in the day, having difficulties. But I really, truly believe that at the core of everything, it's about being a good person. And nobody wants to work with somebody who's difficult to work with. And so, like, from a practical perspective, as if somebody were going to attempt, the freelance world and being a professional musician, we all know it's all about people and having a, positive impact, and, being early, on time, prepared, all that good stuff. But yeah, I do think that you got to be cool.
You've benefited from a great music education in West Hartford. Now you're a faculty member at Jazz at Lincoln Center's music education program. From your perspective, both as a teacher and a student, what's the hardest thing to learn and to teach about music?
You have good questions. This is good. I actually think the hardest thing to teach is getting somebody to believe in themselves and the potential for what is to come, and that the making mistakes in the immediacy is part of the process, trusting that process. Nobody wants to pick up an instrument and start squeaking and squawking, but you have to do the squeaking and squawking to eventually, potentially walk on stage and play for thousands of people. And even if that's not what you want to do, I mean, what I always say to people is it's not about getting students to be the next Miles Davis or John Coltrane, but it's about bringing strong and positive citizens into the world and into our communities. And so in music education and jazz education specifically, our students are developing communication skills, public speaking skills, respect, responsibility, empathy, and listening, especially in jazz, to have to, really focus on what somebody contributed and respond to it, and to work as a team, understanding the role of your instrument in an ensemble. It's the same type of teamwork that you want to see and collaboration that you want to see in a staff meeting somewhere. So I really believe that the impact of music education and jazz education specifically is crucial to developing a community that appreciates each other for our differences and celebrates those, and also has the ability to bring them together in a way to create positive change for the future. Getting kids to practice is also challenging.
Ever since you were a young child, music has been central to your life. Whether you're on the bandstand playing with some of the best musicians on the planet, working with young students exploring the first blues scale, you're inspiring and moving others. How has this life spent making music impacted you on a personal level? Like, what does it mean to you, and how does it shape who you are beyond the stage?
I'm just grateful, so grateful to be a part of this community that has warmly welcomed me and challenged me and supported me. And I'm talking about the jazz community at large, but also for this community here at Jazz at Lincoln Center, who, I first interacted with when I was in high school. When I first met Wynton and a lot of the members of the band, it was here as a participant in essentially Ellington as a high school student. And then to come back after college and start teaching for them, and then eventually to start subbing for Ted, and then to be here today, I never could have imagined it ever. And it just makes me want to show anyone else who has any type of dream, as much as you think might be standing in your way, you can knock it down for sure. It just takes a lot of hard work.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Speaking Soundly. If you liked what you heard, please tell your friends about it. Help spread the word, and follow us on Instagram at SpeakingSNDLY. For more information, you can visit our website, artfulnarrativesmedia.com. If you're new to the show, you can go back and check out earlier episodes featuring Wynton Marsalis, Regina Spektor, Joyce DiDonato, Emmanuel Axe, and Rufus Wainwright, just to name a few. And tune in 2 weeks from today on April 1st as we hear Grammy Award-winning virtuoso Comanche player Kehan Kalhor speaking soundly.